It's early, but Notre Dame is off to a great start recruiting the class of 2025. Plus, they have a chance to close out the class of 2024 with a bang. That's next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up? Welcome to Locked On Irish. It is Thursday, August 3rd, and thank you for making this your first listen of the day. The show is free and available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, so whether you're watching or listening, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button if you have not already. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018, and I've been podcasting about the football team since 2020. I'm also a producer covering college football at the Fox Sports headquarters in LA. The Irish did not practice on Wednesday, so I felt like it was a good time to check in on recruiting, especially coming off a really important weekend in which the staff hosted over 30 prospects for their Grill and Chill cookout event. This wasn't your typical official visit weekend, so to learn more about that and everything that transpired, I'm going to be joined by recruiting insider Kevin Sinclair for the latest on that event, plus big picture stuff on Notre Dame recruiting. For the everyday listeners of the pod, I'll be doing another mailbag episode tomorrow, so get your questions in. You can drop them below in the YouTube comments, or you can send them over on Twitter at Locked On Irish or on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. All right, let's talk to Kevin. Kevin Sinclair from Irish Illustrated is back with us here for a little recruiting check-in. And Kevin, let's start with Notre Dame's big event from this past weekend, the Grill and Chill Cookout. The staff hosted over 30 prospects on campus, and correct me if I'm wrong on that number, mostly from the class of 2025, plus some committed prospects in the class of 24 as well, for what sounded like a really unique experience. So I'll just give you the floor to explain what it is, what went down, and really you could take this any direction you want.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've seen all kinds of recruiting events, and I think it kind of starts with Chad Bowden and Dre Brown, part of the recruiting staff there. They're just kind of those like younger, fun guys who do a really good job of just connecting with young guys for starters, but then organizing really good recruiting events where basically recruits have a great time, so do their families, but also make lots of time and space for recruits and commits to meet each other and get to know each other, kind of thing. And for example, there was three really, really good, really talented offensive linemen there in the 2025 class. Maddie Augustine from Connecticut, Rowan Byrne from New York, and Owen Stravig from Wisconsin. Two of them told me that, they'd met each other briefly at other visits, but then it's just real busy and they never got a chance to talk the whole time. This is visits to other schools recently. But when they're at Notre Dame, they spent the whole day together. They left knowing each other and friends and going to keep in touch, kind of thing. So I think that's really important, because I think for a lot of recruits who maybe commit to Notre Dame, maybe not the entire reason, but part of it is because they've met the other commits. For example, Cam Williams committed after CJ Carr committed. They knew each other, good friends. That's, kind of an enticing thing to, hey, I can play with those guys. I met them on that visit and so on. So there's some good components there. And then obviously Justin Thurman was there on the weekend. He committed, of course, just early this week. So that was obviously a success story. And a lot of the guys who were on the list, many of them actually visited in June, so just a month prior. So there was a lot of guys coming back, which means they must have done a lot of things right in June. And I just felt like, they made a lot of headway with a lot of good prospects there. There were some guys who I think only a couple out of that whole list were, first-time visitors. There's a guy named Jarquez Carter, really good defensive tackle from Florida. Turns out he's pretty good friends with Davion Dixon, who's committed to Notre Dame. That went really well. But yeah, a lot of return visitors, guys getting to know each other really well. And I felt like they, helped themselves a lot with, a handful of recruits at least.
Yeah, so what are some of the benefits to an event like this for the staff and the players as well who are visiting that are different from a typical official visit weekend?
Yeah, I think, again, it's sort of connecting with the commits. Okay, for example, get CJ Carr, Cam Williams, and Sean Sevillano, and all of these guys. Those are really, really high character kids, right? Really high character recruits. They're fun guys. They're the kind of guys who stand out in a room. Like Cam Williams is a really impressive kid. And when he was there, he's been there many times, so he doesn't have to worry about tours and things like that. And I talked to Cam just after the event, and he had met and spent a whole bunch of time with safety Ethan Long, who's like seemingly a priority type recruit, and several other players. There's a safety there named Jadon Blair from North Carolina. He's a 4-star recruit, traveled all the way up there with his family from Winston-Salem, and he took him aside and he talked to Jadon Blair for a long time about why he had committed to Notre Dame. And Jadon Blair's parents, Wojciak, asked them, all the questions that they sort of had about Notre Dame and why he committed there. And I think all of those little connections between, again, these commits who are all pretty impressive kids, right? Lots of these kids are, 4.0 students from great families, really mature, bright young guys. They, reflect Notre Dame really well to these recruits that are there, considering Notre Dame among many schools. And I think Notre Dame does a really good job of separating a few recruits. Rowan Byrne, I just talked to him yesterday. He said he had visited Michigan on Friday, Ohio State on Saturday. And then when he visited Notre Dame, he said it was more just fun, like playing games, like competing.
Yeah, were they just playing like cornhole and stuff?
Yeah, lots of things like that. Yeah, for example, when they had food, they had like a cook-off, right? Like who could grill the best steak and stuff like that. It might sound sort of silly to sort of hear about it, but those types of things are fun. It's what like kind of families do in their backyard and stuff. That's kind of stuff they're into, and they all sound like they had a really good time. And what my point was, I heard from a few recruits that they'd gone on a few other visits, and they're like real serious and. Every 20 minutes, different meetings and videos and stuff you're watching. It just wasn't like that at Notre Dame. It was more like kind of like what I said, what you do in your backyard with your family, having a good time, and really talking to these Notre Dame commits who, again, those are some pretty impressive kids.
Yeah, it sounds like that's a good way to mix it up a little bit, where obviously you have some official visits where you need to do the meeting with all the coaches, the tours and all that, and getting to know the staff and the positional meetings. But sometimes it's probably good just to be able to hang out with these guys, not only the other prospects who are visiting, but the coaches as well, and get to see them in a different light. So I could definitely see why that's appealing to recruits and why the staff would want to do something like that. But you already mentioned his name, the 4-star running back, Justin Thurman out of Florida. Notre Dame was able to secure his commitment coming out of the weekend. He is their third commit in the class of 2025, and by all accounts, he sounds like a really good player. So how was the staff able to get his commitment so early in the process?
Yeah, kind of long story short, so he grew up in St. Louis, okay? And it was just about exactly 1 year ago, he moved down to Tampa. His family relocated there. I believe it was his dad's job to go down there. But he's really, really connected to St. Louis. And he was Christian Gray's teammate in 2021 at DeSmet. Works with this. There's a really prominent, popular trainer there who trained Kyron Williams, Jeremiah Love, and Christian Gray. And he also was coaching at DeSmet in 2021 when Christian Gray and Justin Thurman were teammates there. So there's this immediate connection with some really popular young players in Notre Dame. Beyond that, he's just a prototypical Notre Dame kid. He's elite student, really bright kid, really strong in his faith. Notre Dame was always a school that he was interested in and admired long before he probably ever even thought that he might get offered there one day type thing. So once he got the offer, on top of that, he's a running back. He meets Dylan McCullough. He, coached in the NFL. In terms of resumes and personality and coaching and that, he's probably one of the more impressive running back coaches in college football right now. In terms of being a recruit and meeting coaches, So you kind of add all that up. He knows a couple of freshmen there. He's a top end student, serious about his faith, really bright kid. Just Dylan McCullough, so he visited in June, and by the end of that visit, it just really seemed like it was only a matter of time, and that proved to be the case. He visited again on Sunday, and that was it. It was over by then, and was pretty sure the commitment would come this week, and it did.
Dylan McCullough has been on quite a tear lately with running back recruiting. He's already got 2 of the guys he needs in the class of 2024, and he's already got 1 in the class of 2025. And it doesn't seem like running back is necessarily the biggest position of need, but it doesn't matter. Dylan McCullough just keeps landing these commitments. But on that note, I realize it's still very early in the process for the class of 2025. But what are Notre Dame's biggest needs in this class from a position standpoint right now?
Well, a 2025 class. Well, for starters, Notre Dame, since Marcus Freeman came in, there's more emphasis on the quarterback position. And I think, like, if you want to win big, you got to recruit that position really well every year. Not every
it's pretty
year.
Important.
Yeah. And that's what the best teams do. Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, pretty much every year, right? And so they're doing a good job with that right now. Kenny Minchie, they brought in Sam Hartman, CJ Carr. And so, Deuce Knight, top priority recruit there. Notre Dame has a really good shot with him. We'll see how that sort of shakes out.
And he was there last week, right?
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was there on Thursday. Aside from that, they've done a really good job of addressing, positions across the board. Personally, I think safety, with how thin that position is right now, you've got DJ Brown, Antonio Carter, Thomas Harper are all either leaving after this season, or Carter could possibly return for another year. Those guys are all, on their way out, soon enough. And then you got even Xavier Watson, Ramon Henderson are going to be seniors this fall. They didn't, from Justin Walters to Kari G to, we can just keep going down these names, guys who just transferred out or didn't work out at that position, whatever it may be. So safety, in my opinion, really important position. Not necessarily like a high volume, but got to keep focusing on that position there. Again, how I was just describing safety, JD Bertrand, Maris Liufau, Jack Kaiser, these guys are all going to be leaving Notre Dame, very soon. And, with Prince Colley leaving Notre Dame, they're just, aside from Kaiser, Liufau, and Bertrand, those are the only 3 upperclassmen. All the other linebackers right now are either freshmen or redshirt freshmen. So linebacker is really important. And the 2025 linebacker class is loaded with really, really, really good talent. So that should be a good one there. And then I think the offensive tackle position, really important as well. In Notre Dame, I've added some good tackles each class, but not probably just barely enough to have the numbers. I think focus on that position, land some good tackles, and probably be, cemented for a little while. So safety, linebacker, tackle, those are some that come to mind.
Yeah, a lot of defensive positions, honestly. I would like to see Notre Dame get a couple good Vipers in this class as well. You've mentioned a few of them already, just some of the different names. Deuce Knight, obviously, being the biggest name. He's the quarterback, and I love Notre Dame's approach to the quarterback position. I've been saying that you can't do it every other year. You got to get the top guy every single year, and eventually just let the talent win out. And if guys transfer because they don't win the job, so be it. That's just the nature of college football. But who are some of the other top priority targets from the class of 2025 who made the trip? Maybe some names that fans aren't necessarily totally in on yet, or they just don't know about because, again, it's a class of 2025. We're still focused on the class of 2024 a little bit. And is there anybody who might be on commit watch after this weekend?
Well, one player, I wouldn't say he's on commit watch. He's going to be probably a pretty big recruiting battle for him. But if you want to know about, guys who are priority recruits, it would be really, really nice to land. Owen Schrebig out of Wisconsin, huge tackle, 6'8", 295 to 300 pounds. He's in the top 100. I think he's got a shot at potentially making an argument to be a 5-star recruit. He's got all the size, the talent. He's a really bright kid. I believe he has offers from Stanford and Notre Dame and others. So that's one right there to keep an eye on. But lots of schools recruiting him. We'll see there. One guy I kind of wonder about. It's difficult to tell, what his time frame might look like. But there's a 4-star defensive end, Chris Burgess, out of Chicago. 4-star recruit. This visit just this last Sunday was his 5th trip to Notre Dame since last October. I think his 4th since the spring game. So he's obviously coming back for a reason. He's not taking a lot of visits elsewhere. And so, he really likes Al Washington. He lives nearby in Chicago. He talked to me about that. He likes that it's not not far from home, loves Marcus Freeman. So, we'll see what sort of happens there. But when a kid, visits 5 times in like a, 9-month span or whatever it is, that's a pretty good sign. So in terms of, that sort of commit watch, I would say the other one would be perhaps safety Ethan Long. So he's a kid I mentioned earlier, really, really good safety from Brunswick School in Connecticut, which is like a perfect profile school for Notre Dame. Really athletic kid. Like as a sophomore, he led his varsity basketball team in scoring this last year. Though what isn't clear yet is when he might want to decide. You've got to keep in mind these guys just finished their sophomore years, right?
It's so early.
Yeah, some seem like Notre Dame's clear leader there or close to it, but for all we know, they might not decide for a year from now, and that actually wouldn't be like not typical. So we'll see what happens here, but those are a couple I would keep an eye on, like Chris Burgess and Ethan Long out of Connecticut.
This episode of Locked On Irish is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. I used LinkedIn Jobs a couple years ago in between working at ESPN and Fox. I found a job opening at a production company on LinkedIn, and they made it easy to contact the hiring manager, learn more about the role, and eventually I got the job. LinkedIn also makes it incredibly easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. All you have to do is add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then hire. We all know hiring people can be time-consuming, but adding the right team member can be invaluable to your business, and LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier than ever before. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, let's talk about the class of 2024. Now that Notre Dame has secured a commitment from linebacker Kingston Viliamu-Asa, the top target left on Notre Dame's board is the elite offensive tackle Kirby Lambert out of Massachusetts. And at one point last week, it looked like Lambert was going to take an unofficial visit to the nearby Boston College, which is one of his finalists. But it sounds like that visit did not end up happening. I know there's been some conflicting reports out there. It's really tough to get a read on his recruitment. So can you try to set the record straight on the latest with his recruitment, and as much as you can, because I realize that's a difficult ask?
Yeah, well, it's for starters, I covered his teammate last year, okay, Traore, who's a freshman at Notre Dame now, and I learned firsthand that it's very difficult to get in touch with anyone from that program. Like usually, if I want to know about a recruit, I can always get a hold of their coaches and that. I don't know if they have like a sort of a no media policy or something, but you're just not getting through to anyone there. Lambert himself is a quiet kid who, he's not he'll do interviews here and there, but he's not a kid who really wants to, show his hand, I guess, so to speak. So that's why it's been pretty difficult. Some recruits, there's lots of sources to sort of check in with. He's sort of the opposite of that. And then, like you said, conflicting reports on the visit to Boston College. I heard from someone yesterday that he didn't visit there. I heard from someone else that he didn't arrive or visit when he had planned to, but he may have stopped by Boston College later in the weekend, but it might not have been like an actual recruiting. It's tough to say.
That's strange.
Yeah. Anyhow, Lambert, from the outset, I always felt like Notre Dame was going to land. I still feel, I guess you'd say, cautiously optimistic about it. I think Notre Dame is, if I'd have to say, I'd say Notre Dame, to me, seems like the most likely to land him. A few people I've talked to, and no one seems to have a really good, clear idea on it, but pretty much everyone I've talked to is saying the same thing. They think it's probably going to be Notre Dame, but you just can't be too sure, right? Perfect example, just recently, Kingston Viliamu-Asa out in California. Everyone thought he was going to go to Ohio State. I mean, myself included, but everyone sort of had that hint, he could potentially surprise and choose Notre Dame. And, he didn't decide until just the day before he announced. And for all we know, Lambert may not have made a full decision yet. I think that is the case. So we're going to see what happens here. I guess what I would say, one firm answer, I'll be surprised if he doesn't end up at Notre Dame. We'll see what happens, though.
Yeah, I mean, he's publicly said multiple times that he considers Notre Dame the leader. It sounds like, just me from the outside reading how things have sort of played out with his recruitment, it sounds like a kid who's in high school, who's having some difficulty making a decision that's going to require him to move far away from home, which is totally understandable. It's something that, it's not just recruits. It's a lot of high school kids have to go through that process when they're making their college choice. They're like, do I really want to go that far from home? A lot of kids want to stay nearby. And I totally get it, but we'll wait and see. Obviously, I'm hoping that he ends up at Notre Dame, and it does seem like Notre Dame is the leader. What insight do you have on Notre Dame's approach to recruiting Lambert? Because like you said, he's a different prospect. He's a really important prospect. Is it Joe Rudolph leading the way? Is Freeman coming in a little bit more? Do you have any insight on how Notre Dame is sort of approaching this? Because it's a little bit of a different recruitment.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, you get a change at the offensive line coach. I remember it wasn't, it was a little while ago now, but it didn't even seem that long ago. I remember talking to him all about Harry Heastan and his relationship with him. Well, Heastan's gone now, and what that means is you got to get him comfortable with that new coach, and that means Joe Rudolph definitely, leading the way, getting in touch with him, getting him comfortable with the idea of that being the offensive line coach there, and then of course you get to meet in person when he takes his visit, and then of course whenever they're working on closing on a top end recruit, whether it's Kingston or Lambert or someone of that sort. Marcus Freeman's involved there, of course, right? Chad Bowden has good relationships with every recruit, it seems. So, those are the three guys there. And, Lambert's, the end of the day, there's two things that he really likes there. He's a top end student. I mean, he has an offer from Harvard for a reason. Very, very, very good student. So that right there is appealing to him. And then his teammate being a freshman there, and his teammate telling him, it's great here. You should come here as well. Just kind of put all those things together there. And that's what's appealing for him. Of course, Boston College he lives in the Boston area, so he could stay home. But, I like Notre Dame to finish that one. But again, not too sure. So it's, nerve wracking to have a prediction in there right now.
All right. We talked about him a little bit. Kingston Viliamu-Asa. You and I have talked offline about his commitment a little bit, but not here on the show. So where does his commitment rank among the biggest surprises to you since you started on the Notre Dame recruiting beat? Because it shocked me when I watched it live, but I think you got a little bit of a tip beforehand that, hey, it might actually end up being Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'd say about a week before he announced, I talked to his linebacker coach, a linebacker coach at Bosco, and, I didn't really get anything from him. And it seemed like he was either purposely sort of, hiding it from me, or that he himself legitimately didn't know. And he's talking with other people covering the recruitment. It was the same thing for all of them. Everyone was, trying to get a read on it. It seemed like it was going to be Ohio State, and it was came down to the wire. But I always felt like Notre Dame had a shot there, and clearly they did. He, he's a pretty religious kid. He went on a retreat with some people from his church group not too long before he announced his decision. The purpose of that is, really thinking about what he's going to do and try to solidify it, get away and sort of think it through. And I know that, in the end, I think Notre Dame was sort of carving a different path, so to speak, doing something a little bit different, thinking about his future. I think those things really added up to the win there. Also, I'd learned that, his mom had been accepted to Stanford, years ago, ended up not being able to go. And I think maybe that sort of irked her a little bit all of these years that she couldn't go to Stanford. Now, you can imagine what it would then be like to see your son have the opportunity to go to school like Notre Dame. I know that there is a lot of support from his mom toward Notre Dame. Not that she was necessarily steering him there. And in the end, I think he just bought that. He Marcus Freeman says all the time, choose hard, right? And it's, really good long-term payoff. And mature kid, he's bright, and he has a 4.4 GPA. And I think he just decided to take that more difficult path. That's not an easy decision. So it tells you a lot about, the type of kid he is, really. And man, what a great player. I think he's a little underranked. I think he's arguably the best linebacker in the country. And, he's in like 6'3", maybe a bit more than 6'3". I think he's just over 225. He's an outstanding prospect. So huge pickup there for Notre Dame, because they, had lost a few really big ones on defense. And I think they, that was a good one, but they needed that one. They needed that kind of splash. So that was, man, what a big deal. And in terms of your question of the most surprising commitments, I mean, over the last like 3 or 4 years, I'd say Emil Wagner and maybe King, off the top of my head. Maybe that's without looking at all the classes, but those two there probably might be the two most surprising. I think Wagner may have been the most surprising, because it was to the point where I literally wasn't even watching his announcement. I felt at the moment I knew he wasn't going to choose Notre Dame. And I don't know for sure, but I don't even know if some of Notre Dame's coaches were watching it either.
I don't think they. Yeah, I think caught it by surprise.
Huge surprise. So those are the two that I can think of right now, anyhow.
Okay. I hope with KVA, man, we got to get you out here to LA, and we'll go to a Bosco game together this fall to watch him in person, because I'm really excited to see him live. But last question before I let you go, and I saved this for last because, frankly, I'm already kind of tired of talking about it. So, as you know, Ross Sellinger from Yahoo Sports reported that Notre Dame is likely going to re-sign with Under Armour on a 10-year deal. Notre Dame nor Under Armour have yet to confirm this publicly at the time of this recording, I should mention, but that certainly seems like the direction that Notre Dame is headed here. What impact, if any, do you think this will have on Notre Dame recruiting?
I don't see it ever being a deciding factor with any recruit. And I'm not saying this in a way that I'm not saying that this doesn't matter at all and that young people don't care, because that's clearly not true. But I don't think Notre Dame is ever going to not get a commitment or lose a commitment over an apparel deal. Because you think about Notre Dame and why you choose Notre Dame. Apparel, what brand makes their, football jerseys, all of those types of things is so far outside of why people choose Notre Dame, right? It's the long-term aspect of it, right? It's, there's the 4 for 40 approach, the strength of the degree. Some of the more superficial things might apply in recruiting pitches with, some other programs, but not at Notre Dame. And that's my view of it. Some people sort of argue otherwise. But man, I just don't see it costing them on the recruiting trail. That's my point of view on it.
Yeah, that's what I figured, but I felt like I needed to ask since the topic has sort of dominated the conversation over the past 24 hours or so. But he is Kevin Sinclair, recruiting insider for Irish Illustrated. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on. I really appreciate it, and now you can get some rest, man. Take care.
All right, thanks very much. Anytime.
That's going to do it for me today. Thanks again for making this your first listen of the day. Remember to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and send your mailbag questions in if you want to be featured on tomorrow's episode. You can send them in on Twitter at LockedOnIrish, on Instagram at LockedOnIrishPod, and my personal Twitter account at Tyler, WOJCIAK. I'll see you guys tomorrow.